Funding for This Is Nashville comes from you, our listeners, and Music City Prep Clinic, Nashville-based provider for PrEP and offering comprehensive sexual health services in an environment designed to be safe, professional, and shame-free. Learn more at musiccityprep.org.
Before we get going, it's become a bit of a Thanksgiving tradition for the WPLN Newsroom to share podcast recommendations. Our managing editor, Tasha A.F. Limley, for instance, recommends Episode 1 of The Alabama Murders from Malcolm Gladwell. She's not even a huge Gladwell fan, but this one got her number, and she'll explain why on our podcast recommendation list. You can find it at our homepage or on WPLN's socials this week. In honor of this tradition, we are re-airing our most downloaded episode of This Is Nashville. Yes, it's also a podcast. And on with that show. I'm Blake Farmer, and this is Nashville. This is a city whose story is tightly intertwined with the historically black colleges and universities here, Fisk, Meharry, Tennessee State, and let's not forget American Baptist across the river from us here in Metro Center. But there's an HBCU that most of us never knew about. Roger Williams University. Other than 2 plaques on the Peabody campus of Vanderbilt, there is not much left of the school's history, which is why a project at Vanderbilt University is trying to memorialize this institution that is long gone. Lanisha Rouse is a visual artist who is working with Dr. Kevin Murphy, Chair of Art History and Architecture at Vanderbilt, and they're both right here in the studio in front of me. Welcome to you both.
Thank you.
Kevin, you've got this course called American Icons and Monuments. You're investigating the history of Roger Williams University this semester. Lanisha is the first Berg Global Artist in Residence working closely with your class. So Lanisha, let me start with you. How did you get drawn to this specific project?
Yeah, so Kevin and I met at Haystack over a year ago.
Well, you may have to start with Haystack. Haystack.
Yes, Haystack Craft and Mountain School.
All right.
I was teaching, and he was one of the students in my class. And
student becomes a teacher, teacher becomes, okay, I like this.
Yeah, now a collaborator of sorts. And so in that forming of the relationship, I began to learn about opportunities at Vanderbilt through the Berg Scholarship, and then also learning about Roger Williams and the work that Kevin was doing with others, Angela and others at Vanderbilt, to tell the story and to memorialize the story in history. And I've always been interested in history. My work, I'm a collage artist mostly, and I'm really wanting to tell stories. I see myself as a storyteller, as an artist, and I was drawn to the history and the story he was wanting to tell, and the opportunity to work with a historian like himself.
Well, seeing some of your collage work, I feel like it's so accessible, at least to me. I don't think of myself as a real fine art person, and something about collage and materials and things, there's a lot to it that I can get. So we'll get into that. All right, so Kevin, the buildings that were on the Peabody campus from Roger Williams, they burned in 1905. And I read that the fires were suspicious. Like everywhere I talk, the word suspicious is used. It sounds like people maybe believe they were racially motivated. What do we know?
Well, I think it still remains unclear exactly what the origin of the fire was. But anytime you have highly valued property that's contested by various people and institutions, and the thing on it that's blocking its development disappears in a fire that nobody can explain, that raises some eyebrows. Yeah. So, I think that there's always been a bit of speculation about how it was that those fires came about.
Well, the school started in the months after the Civil War, I think 1866, sort of in somebody's house almost. But I read that Roger Williams the school was trying to buy the very land that Fisk is on off of Jefferson Street, but Fisk beat him to it, which I find so interesting. But how did the school end up over next to Vanderbilt? And was Vanderbilt around at that time?
Yes, they were, historically coincided, at least. Fisk was started, Roger Williams started before Vanderbilt, but the two existed alongside one another for number of 30 years.
Right, they were like neighboring institutions, I
right,
guess.
Yes.
Well, so Lanisha, I mean, so much of what you do is based on like things you can put your hands on. Are there any artifacts that actually remain from this?
Photographs and news stories that are in the archives that I've been able to access from collage work. But you have very little as far as like bricks or like tangible objects in that way. But there's definitely photographs of students, football teams, the building structures, and news articles you can find.
And is there even any physical presence, like where people know precisely where those buildings were on the campus? Do you know?
Yeah, well, there's a historical marker.
Yeah, there are two markers that are approximately on the site. And one of the things that my colleague Angela Sutton, who Lanisha mentioned a moment ago, an assistant dean in the College of Arts and Sciences, who's done an enormous amount of research on Roger Williams. She and I have been talking about the potential for doing some kind of below-grade exploration to actually find the precise locations of the buildings, since they're completely gone. They've disappeared, but undoubtedly there's some kind of archaeological evidence for them. But other than that, no.
Wow. Lanisha, what kind of imagery or iconography do you now associate with Roger Williams now that you've kind of sunk your teeth into this project?
Yes. As you asked the question, I was envisioning the students that attended there and the poise, the strength, their eyes. They were clergy, they were teachers, they were doctors that were coming through, educators that you can see the resiliency and the strength and determination through their eyes. I just keep thinking of their eyes as you ask.
Well, the old photos are the few that I've seen are so striking, and you just sort of think of these families and all that their families had lived through not long before this.
Oh, yeah. I mean, incredible. You have like the social, financial, political challenges of that time. And you have this school that was built to educate freed, formerly enslaved persons. Yeah, it was really profound.
So Kevin, the fire wasn't exactly the end by any means. I think there were some. I don't know if it led to the financial struggles, but what happened to the school?
Well, it was it moved, and then it was absorbed by other institutions.
Right.
So it no longer existed in its same form. But I would love to tag onto Lanisha's response to your last question, if that's okay.
That is supposed to be the beauty of this show. So please hop on.
Your question and Lanisha's response was really making me think of something that I've been thinking of over the past week. As higher education is so much under debate these days and under attack from some quarters, and I keep thinking about what it would have meant to this cohort of students, who were of a race that could be owned by other people, right? Less than 10 years earlier, and here they are given this opportunity to pursue higher education, which I have a deep reverence for, and as Lanisha says, when you see their faces, when you see these people, you just have to imagine what it would have meant to them to be part of this institution.
If you're just joining us, I'm Blake Farmer. This is Nashville. We're talking about the lost history of Roger Williams University, a historically black institution that was built where the Vanderbilt Peabody campus sits. There actually is a Roger Williams University if you just Google it. But I believe it's the same person because there's this Rhode Island connection. But is that the same person that this school was named for?
Right. Roger Williams University is in Bristol, Rhode Island, and it's named for Roger Williams, who was from Rhode Island, who was a champion of religious freedom, and the supporters of Roger Williams in Nashville were from Rhode Island, and so it was named for him. But he had, lived hundreds of years before and had no connection. But got that name. And so there's always a kind of confusion because people who know Roger Williams in Rhode Island, think that that's what you're talking about.
Yeah. Well, but he was an abolitionist, correct? Lanisha, what have you learned about this character? And does he play a role in kind of the history here locally?
Yeah, I've spent a lot of time just learning about the university and the school.
Yeah.
Part of the fellowship is providing space for me to kind of go from the macro to the micro to the macro.
Yeah.
But I did know he was an abolitionist. I know that he invested in education for formerly enslaved persons, and it was really important for this work to be done in the South. Yeah. And I'm looking forward to learning more about him being here and digging into some of the archives that Angela has found.
Well, how does the story of this school connect to larger concepts, maybe, Kevin, that you teach in this course about icons and monuments? So
the course was actually pioneered by my colleague Vivian Freed, who's now retired and who is an expert on the U.S. Capitol and written the fundamental study of it and developed this course. And when she retired, I said, I'd love to take it over because I'm interested in monuments and the representation of history and so on. And I was teaching it the first time in the summer of 2020.
Oh, my.
And, I'm teaching the course, and during the breaks, I would say to the students, it was on Zoom during the pandemic. I'd say, you've got to go look at the, television or online or something and see what's happening now. With monuments around the United States and a kind of contestation over what they represent. And so Roger Williams is just one part of this larger course where we were thinking about the objects through which the history of the U.S. is represented and has been represented over the course of time.
Lanisha, what do you hope comes out of this? Because obviously there's, other than a couple of plaques, there is not a monument to what this institution, was or represents, I don't think.
Yeah, as someone who lived in Nashville and worked in Hillsborough Village my whole time and actually lived in the neighborhood, I did not know this part of our history. And
I didn't either. Right? Before prepping before this topic came up for a show, Mary Mancini's the producer, I was like, Roger Williams, don't know the first thing about it.
Right. And so it was enlightening to learn about it. And I want to create a piece. So I am working on a piece that, a visual piece that will honor that part of our collective history and story. Especially at a time when history seems in some ways so fragile to revision and erasure. I come from a people that believes it's important to celebrate our story and to know our story and our ancestors and give honor to them because that helps us in navigating the future in many ways. Their endurance, their imagination, I stand on the backs of. I stand on the imaginations of. And so I hope that through the work that I'm able to create on my own and then in partnership with Kevin and the students, that we can continue to make visible in ways and foster curiosity of those who encountered the work.
Well, my understanding, Kevin, is that there was hope of doing something that might be even more of like a public art kind of display. What happened there?
So Angela Sutton and I were part of a group, kind of informal group of people at Vanderbilt who had all been kind of independently getting interested in Roger Williams. And then we proposed a collaborative project to the National Endowment for the Humanities, which was funded, a year and a half ago or so. And the project was to have a symposium and bring together stakeholders in the history of Roger Williams, people from Nashville, but then also people from other institutions that had, uncovered and represented diverse parts of their history. And we wanted to create an opportunity to talk about how this would be celebrated, how this bit of our history could be made more visible and really celebrated on our campus and in Nashville. And our grant went through this very elaborate NEH review process and then was canceled as part of the mass cancellation of NEH-funded projects by the administration last spring. So at that point, we had to regroup, and what I decided to do was to pursue the project on a smaller scale with my students, and luckily, Leticia was able to be here, and so we folded this into the course that I had been planning to teach this semester and make this the kind of hands-on, culminating project of the students.
Well, before we let you go, would you kind of help us understand why the story of Roger Williams University is important to us right now in Nashville in 2025?
Well, I would say that it's important for us to understand the full range of institutions and people who have made the place that we inhabit what it is. So, for instance, when I also teach a course on women in architecture, and in that course, I talk about Etta Cohen, who is the benefactor of the building where we meet, and very few people know her story. And she was a Jewish American woman, the wife of a merchant. They ran a jewelry and pawn shop downtown in Nashville, and she gave the money for our building, and she actually had an apartment there, and she was an artist, a collector. And her story, too, is one that I don't think is talked about enough. So I think that, to make sure that everybody feels included in an institution and a city, we need to know as much as we possibly can about that place. So I think understanding Roger Williams is part of that larger project.
Well, thank you for at least giving this introduction today, and we look forward to seeing what else comes out of the project. When we come back, we'll have another Rouse in the house, Lenicia and her poet sister, Sienna Rouse. We'll talk about their project at the Curb Center, which is right there on the site of what was the Roger Williams campus. Stay with us. This is Nashville. Before we dive back into our most downloaded show this year, might I share another podcast recommendation? On our annual recommendation list, news director Tony Gonzalez makes the case for you to listen to Music Citizens, specifically the Tuner episode. Brent Ulrich, the most prolific piano tuner in the city, if not the world, is the subject of this episode. You'll venture into some famous spaces and discover a distinct multi-generation Music City story. It's on our pod recs at WPLN.org and on our socials. Back to the show. I'm Blake Farmer, and this is Nashville. So this is Nashville, but our show is going to take us to South Carolina for a bit, to an unincorporated town with a few thousand people called Haygood, named after a Confederate general and a former governor of South Carolina. It's also the ancestral home of visual artist Leticia Rouse, who was with us in our first segment, and poet Sienna Rouse. And it's the subject of their exhibit at the Curb Center on Vanderbilt's campus. Sienna, welcome to This is Nashville. Can you take us to Haygood for a second? What's it like?
So Haygood, South Carolina is where my great-great-grandmother, Annie, grew up, and she was born there, the first free-born woman in our family, in my direct family line. And
on this land.
On this land. And my grandmother lived there with her, and my mother was born with a midwife right there on that land. And so in so many ways, we did not grow up there. We did not spend all of our time there because our grandmother ended up moving next door to Camden, South Carolina. But in a lot of ways, it's an ancestral home for us, this small town next to where our grandmother grew up.
Wow.
Or where she grew up.
I got to visit last Thanksgiving to take some photographs of the land and walk with my mom and hear her stories of growing up there as a child. And she took me to like the local grocery store, and it's a old southern town with the beautiful sunsets. I just keep remembering the landscape, beautiful trees and cotton growing, but the sun, the light, and the dirt roads that she just remembered walking down. Yeah, it was really beautiful.
And that sounds so special. Well, maybe let's get to a piece of this work. So this exhibit, Hey Good, that's in the Curb Center, features your collage work, Lanisha, and then your poetry. But I wonder, Sienna, if you would read us a poem featured in that exhibit. Give us a treat. Okay.
Super. And I'm going to read a poem called Interrogation of the Southern Live Oak. It actually was born originally from another piece Lanisha did several years ago, and I wrote in response to it. And then what she has done in art, we like to respond to each other, which I think is great. So with this exhibition, she has brought it back and has now responded to the poem with works on the wall.
So you're saying the poem that we're about to hear, there's a visual representation of it as part of this exhibit.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yes.
lovely. All right.
So I'll read the poem, and then you have to come see the work.
Whet the appetite. Here we go.
Interrogation of the Southern Live Oak. What should I ask you? Why do I seek out the scent of your secrets, beg to gargle your history in my throat? What did I ask you in my youth when, red-sneakered and curious, I climbed? Or did I just let you listen? The sun breaks on my brow like yoke, and I find you for relief. But you owe me nothing, not shade or rest or wisdom. Why do I ask when I know your voice remains quiet as a black hole or the future? Back in the day, I held my granny's hand, asked her skin to tell her stories. I attempt to read the wrinkles on your torso. Why? Why do I want your elbow crook to teach me a thing about hurricanes and how to drop to earth while also reaching forward and up and through a storm with the confidence of a bison's steady stomp? Stop asking for all my memories, Granny said. And I think she meant she was tired of trying to remember things she'll never forget. Or perhaps once her wild tresses went the gray of Spanish moss moaning from her crown, she knew that memory denies some of its secrets, even to the ones who did the living. I stare and try to catch a glint of sky between your leaves, as if these constellations point me towards some kind of wise, but always they just direct their radial threads of light right back at me. I am not the center of the universe. You don't owe me all of your understory or its knowing. I just see myself in this particular winter appearing evergreen in the mirror, but shedding secretly. And I can't help but wonder what you've held and beheld, what kind of living taught you to hide your sloughing too.
Poet Sienna Rouse. Every live oak seems to have some sort of story in it, and that one especially. Tired of trying to remember things she'll never forget.
Right.
I assume that you are talking about your actual grandmother, probably.
Yes,
wow,
yes.
It's beautiful. Well, one can see why these generations tied to this place in Haygood, South Carolina, would be great fodder for a project like this. As sisters, have you all worked together before? I mean, I guess you talked about your art in conversation, but Lanisha, have y'all tried to work like this together?
No, this is the first time that we've worked to this extent.
Yeah.
Over the years, we have always been in conversation as artists with each other and sisters. And every now and then she would loan me a poem for a work. But this is our first time doing a collaboration.
And we've wanted to. We've wanted to
Yes.
have that time and space to do it. And it's just never quite worked out until this opportunity.
Wow.
I know. I remember in 2018, I saw her. She got to work with Nick Cave for the Frisk. And I came to experience it. And I remember sitting in the symphony audience saying, I want to work with her. I want our work
She's
to
got
come
something.
to line. Yeah. And then when I saw the Kara Walker, my imagination, when she curated that and had poetry in that show as well, my imagination began to stir. We entered into conversation like in 2021, 22 about collaborating to this extent and what that would look like.
Yeah, and we both had that a part of our practice. I've always been responding to art, even before I knew there was a word for that, ekphrasis, which is a Greek word for responding to visual art. But
ekphrasis?
Yes, EKPHRASIS.
Wow, that's beautiful.
Mm-hmm. And so I already had that in my practice, and then she already was constantly responding to Lucille Clifton and other poets, and even, having them layered in her work already. So
it made sense.
Yeah,
collaborate.
If you're just joining us, I'm Blake Farmer. This is Nashville. We're talking to visual artist Lanicia Rouse, her sister poet Sienna Rouse, about their exhibit at the Curb Center, which is about their ancestral home of Haygood, South Carolina. One line in the exhibition notes says, but there's something about the South, something about being black in the South, something about being black and woman in the South that makes looking back a necessary way forward. I wonder if you all could unpack that concept for us.
Yeah, I think there's so many different ways to unpack it. We like layers, obviously. Yeah. In poetry, we have layers, and in collage work. But, I think especially when I think of each of those particularities, they are all particularities that people like to place stories upon or make assumptions about being Southern, making assumptions about being woman, making assumptions about being black. And so all of those coming together, that necessary aspect of actually reaching into history, actually really allowing a black woman in the South to tell her story, to be in her story, to be in her power, is an empowering practice, is how I move forward. I remember when I first read Gloria Naylor's Mama Day, which is one of my favorite fiction books, and it just came alive to me in such a way that even though it wasn't how my grandmother behaved, I knew that this was such a part of my story. And it was these black women who were in their power and moving powerfully through the Southern landscape, right off the coast of South Carolina in this book in particular. And so it's so important, whether it's fiction or real, for us to know our powerful way forward. And I think the entire nation can learn a lot about powerful ways forward when we listen to black women, especially in the South.
I also understand you all are kind of playing with this concept that Toni Morrison coined called rememory, which I have had to brief myself on, but it's like when a memory, maybe of a traumatic event or something else, is so potent that it almost exists not just in someone's mind, but almost in a place that others could experience. So what kind of rememories are you all sharing from Haygood, Lanicia?
Yeah, we're memories of love, mothering, love in relationships, how relationships can birth joy and strength, but also deep pains and generational traumas that we are still working to heal today. We are remembering the land, our great-grandmother's table. We're remembering how they were givers, how they had very little in many ways when we think about money, and endured, and kind of in conversation with our mom and collecting these stories, and together we are remembering the realities that they endured, and yet they operated out of abundancy.
Yeah,
extremely generous.
Especially the abundance of the land too. Like they actually ate from the land, and it was lush and beautiful. And they, when my mom lists all of the things that they planted and had there, and that they would just literally pick up a watermelon that their grandmother had planted. So they did live with little, but also felt abundant and had a lot because they had this relationship with the property.
Yeah. And then too, there's a lot of personal story also getting kind of weaved into these stories of the women in our lives, and the endurance for me and the faith and like this ancestral connection to the lives of these women that we're remembering has also helped build endurance and strength and fortitude in me as I am moving forward and navigating life and realities on a personal level and a collective level. So there's a lot of that memory work being done too.
The work includes family artifacts, I think, right?
Yeah.
That you all. So what kind of exists from Haygood that you've been able to pull into the collage work?
Yes. So my mom was really kind. It's taken her years to say, like, oh, yes, you are an artist and I can trust you with these artifacts.
Like you're going to get paint and glue all over this stuff.
Right. But a couple of years ago, she was just like, okay, little by little, I'll begin to send you photographs. Because my grandmother was the keeper of our story.
I see.
Like her living room was a museum of all of the news articles, the photographs, the history of who we were.
Literally a museum. Like she didn't want you to sit anywhere in there.
The living room wasn't really a living room.
Don't knock any of the photos over. So you don't live in the living room.
Yeah.
There was plastic on the
Visit
floor.
the living room.
Yeah, like a museum.
Look around and then go sit on the back
porch.
porch.
It was our stories.
It was our stories. And so Mom has given us a quilt that my grandmother, that covered her in her last days of life, and that my mom wrapped herself in until she didn't need to anymore. And this summer she gave it to me and it's like, you can create art with this. It's in the show. There is a picture frame that belonged to our great-great-grandmother Annie. So it's over 70, 80 years old, that is in the work. There are tablecloths that my grandmother loved to cook, and she loved her table. Her door was always open. And if you wanted a meal, you could have a meal. And so we have her tablecloths that my mom has given me, clothes, the church dress.
Her candy bowl.
She was the candy lady in the neighborhood. Like had a little candy shop across the street, and we had to share her with the kids in the neighborhood.
Yeah.
But we have her candy bowl, and we have candy next to the quilt because she was a giver that people can just... We'll keep it stocked, you know, the whole exhibition for people just to take
there is
one.
actually a candy jar at the exhibition.
A candy bowl, yes.
So feel free to take it, you're
Please
saying, if you visit the Curb
please.
Center. Okay.
Yeah.
Sienna, I wonder, did you all of these things, I mean, I'm living in it as if I'm sort of visiting my grandparents or something. I wonder what you're hoping could become universal about your all's very particular exploration of your own lineage.
Yes. The practice for me has been so life-giving, and it's one that I've done for a long time. When I was 26, I started asking the women of my family to tell me their stories so that I could collect them, and which is why my granny was like, "Get out of my face," but which I mentioned in the poem. But so I really did feel like it was important for us to start having those stories in our bodies, and then right now, as we're facing revision in history and the threat of history being erased, I feel like what a wonderful thing for us all to practice, to really own our stories. I teach at the women's prison, actually, and so I work with women who aren't free, and I'm constantly saying, but what you do own is your story. It's yours, and no one can lock that in a cage. You know, you can get it out in the world. And so remembering that we can own our stories and we can own our histories and that we can be the storytellers of it. And we can tap into that mothering energy that I think is lush and lovely and growing and necessary right now.
It does seem like if somebody else was given this story, one could see them taking it a very different direction, a more expected direction about sort of the pain, the hardship that came before your great. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And it doesn't seem that's the. I'm hearing love, lushness, these abundance.
Abundance, yeah. One of my favorite professors in grad school, and these words have shaped the way I approach my work. He said, opened up class by saying, "We are storied people all the way down to the bone, and that we're all born into stories that are not of our own choosing." And as he began to go on, he helped me, and I've clung on to those words because it's like, oh, I want to know the story I was born into. I want to know the stories that I'm allowing to claim me, the ones I want to let go of, the ones I want to write for myself and with others. And so I am hoping, like we thought about this exhibition as storytelling, as visual poems on the wall, and we're inviting people to enter in our story with hopes that it evokes and opens them up to their own.
Yeah.
And I think that's important work as we all move forward.
Well, you all are doing workshops where you invite people to kind of explore their own maternal lineage through collage and poetry. How do you guide people to do this work that you all have been doing over the last many years?
Yeah, so one of the practices, again, that I adopted in 26 was when I was 26. In 1926. That's my grandma coming out. No, but was a step back practice. And so there's this actual like movement practice where you're stepping back into memories. And so I guide people through that, and we get some language going where they are actually connecting to their own family histories. And then Lenicia
And then I have a
takes over.
practice of sitting with visuals and photographs and slow reading of those visuals to create like a picture, to then create visual collage pieces. And a practice of sitting with words. So the words that they create, then they will be invited to slowly read and allow that to spark the collage that they create, the visual that they create.
We're actually going to be talking about the Curb Center specifically here in just a moment, but we do need to take one more break. And when we come back, we'll go inside the Curb Center, get to know this gallery at Vanderbilt that, apparently also throws some of the best artist receptions in town, we hear. This is Nashville. Stay with us. I'll give you one more podcast recommendation before we get back to our most downloaded episode of the year for This is Nashville. WPLN's Newsroom shares podcast recommendations at Thanksgiving, whether that's for traveling or to enjoy while cooking or vegging out or whatever. This year, Nash Villager host Nina Cardona suggests American History Hit, specifically the episode called Who Was the Worst President Ever? Spoiler alert, Tennessee presidents are involved. It's at our podcast recommendation list on the homepage or WPLN socials. Enjoy. I'm Blake Farmer, and this is Nashville. Well, we've covered a lot of ground. We started the hour learning the unseen history of Roger Williams University, which is a historically black college that didn't make it beyond the 1920s, largely because it was burned in two suspicious fires. We talked about the artistic project to memorialize this institution, then ventured to South Carolina to work in an exhibit that Lenicia and Sienna Rouse have at the Curb Center Gallery about tracing their own maternal ancestral lines. And we wrapped the hour inside the Curb Center itself, which is at the corner of what would have been the Roger Williams University campus, now the Peabody campus of Vanderbilt. Producer Mary Mancini dropped in to the Curb Center for a midday tour.
My name is David Wilson, and I'm the program coordinator at the Curb Center at Vanderbilt. And the Curb Center is kind of like this little hidden gem, a gem on campus for interdisciplinary arts opportunities for faculty, staff, students, as well as the community. The main part of the Curb Center is in the historic house. The house was a standalone unit, and then over time, as it was brought in closer and closer into the campus, it became more and more a assembled structure. In the springtime, we turned this outer part of the workshop room into a gallery, and we feature the artwork of our Curb Scholars. It's a cohort group of about 16 students, I believe, this semester, and they're a very talented group from all disciplines. Some of the artwork that you see back here in the hallway, this is sort of artwork that's been collected over the years with the Curb Center for artists who have engaged with either exhibitions or interactions with the Curb Scholars. The Big Al Carter piece, come to find out, it was created by Bob Gray, a Tennessee artist who is extremely popular. The piece right behind me here from Dustin Mader was part of a exhibition we did with the Ancient Art Archive. Dustin Mader produced this portrait with a Vanderbilt art student, and the symbolic nature of this portrait shows the unity of community from different parts of our nation, especially from the Chickasaw Nation. We have one piece that spoke about the urgency of redesigning Edge Hill. 10 years later, we still have that urgency even more. We also have the best receptions on campus, by the way. Well, if there's an art reception that's happening, it's happening here.
You heard it. Best art receptions in town at the Curb Center. And joining us in the studio is Dr. Leah Lowe, theater professor at Vanderbilt and director of the Curb Center for Art, Enterprise, and Public Policy Art. So when's the next artist reception?
It will be in the spring.
Oh, you have an answer.
Yeah. I don't know the date yet, but
Okay.
I did want to say we are going to, in the spring, we're doing a juried art show, and we are accepting contributions right now. It's a show that's going to be focusing on resilience and adaptation in the face of the climate crisis. So if folks are interested, they can find more information about that on our website.
And by folks, we're not just talking about students, faculty, right? It's for the community.
This is for the community. So we really want to feature the artwork of Middle Tennessee artists. And I think we went through various definitions of Middle Tennessee before we settled on Davidson County and the 5 surrounding counties that touch it.
Okay. Well, it does seem like the Curb Center is as much about engaging the community as it is folks who are on campus at Vanderbilt there. What do you find is your guiding principle for how you all spend your time?
Well, the guiding principle for me is in our mission statement, which is we elevate the arts as a form of inquiry, as a way of understanding, and as a celebration of the human spirit. So we are really interested in thinking about how artists are asking questions and responding to pressing issues, right? Just the same way that scholars, write books about pressing issues. Art is a different way of asking questions, and I think it addresses a different part of our being than scholarship does, but it's equally important, I would argue.
Yeah. Do you find it more of a challenge to get the audience, whoever that is, to take the artist response as seriously as other responses that might happen in academia?
Well, I think academia is often a culture of the book, right? So I do spend a fair amount of time just pointing at paintings, saying this too is a response, right?
I see.
But I think we're getting a lot of traction. We are really interested in interdisciplinary partnerships at the Curb Center. We've worked a lot with Vanderbilt's program for the communication of science and technology in various ways. And we're interested not in just doing art for art's sake, but in taking art and using it as a kind of prism to look at different areas of society and culture.
I wonder if you could give us an example of how you all have done that in the last couple of years that sort of would resonate with folks, with almost current events and art.
Sure. Well, last fall, I think it was, we embarked on something that we called the Eco-Grief Project, which was really about exploring kind of the emotional and spiritual landscape of living through the climate crisis. So we commissioned 4 short plays by playwrights all over the country. We produced them in the theater department using sustainable materials and methods. And we coupled this with an art exhibit called Extraction Interaction that featured the work of 3 artists who engage with extractive industries in one way or another. So it was a kind of comprehensive sort of thinking about what does it mean? What does it look like? What does it feel like to be living in this time, grappling with a climate that is increasingly unpredictable and frightening?
It seems like there's so much going on there, and there would be. I wonder if you were surprised by any of the responses. That how you could turn these complex ideas into something that really might resonate with an audience.
Yeah, I mean, I'll tell you, one of the plays, my favorite play, was a play by a playwright named Kristen Adajak, and it was basically like a kind of road play, not a road movie, but a road play. A young woman with a heart condition kidnapped a horseshoe crab in an effort to become self-sufficient. Because I don't know if you know, but horseshoe crab blood is used to test pharmaceuticals and medical devices. So she was trying to sort of like spring this horseshoe crab from the lab, right? And it was a really funny, wonderful, warm play, right? That really invited folks in to think about the climate crisis, but not from a kind of scary, from a perspective of, is there a way that we can be alone in this moment, or are we all in this together? I think was the essential question that the play was asking, but it was incredibly witty and funny. And we welded, our theater technical staff welded together 5 or 6 horseshoe crabs that became very hot commodities once the play closed. Everybody wanted their own horseshoe crab.
Wow. Well, listen, that's a hot play then. So is your strategy at this moment, we had Kevin in here talking about obviously grant funding that has been, at risk. But is your strategy changing at all in this moment when arts funding is kind of being cut here and there all over the place?
We have started talking about that. The Curb Center was very generously endowed by Mike Curb, a Nashville record producer and philanthropist. We've started talking about how we can best support projects that, particularly on campus, that are starting to lose funding. I don't think we're at the end of that discussion yet. It's sort of, the landscape is becoming clearer and is not yet entirely clear, I would say, but it is a real concern.
Yeah. I mean, it does seem like you may not realize what practical effects there are from cutting funding of some kind until all of a sudden, it's that project that's going to go away. Have you all seen anything go away that has made you all want to step in and help out?
Well, we run a small grant program for students, faculty, and staff that often provides it's not a huge amount of money, but it's often the difference between someone being able to do a project and not being able to do a project. And I think we're going to be continuing to get more requests. We work with a dance company based in Austin, Texas, that is starting to kind of pivot the way that they're thinking about collaborative projects based on funding. So we're just starting to kind of have a conversation with them about what a planned project. I think we had planned a project with them. They're called Forklift Dance Works. That is not the project we will be doing. We will be doing a different project instead in response to some of the funding cuts.
Oh, I see. I see. Well, what kind of projects, you talked about this jury show coming up, but like what kind of projects is the center interested in supporting? What would you like to see?
Well, I personally love projects that are collaborative in some way, shape, or form. So I am really, really interested in partnering with different entities around campus. So that may not be the places where you would think like, an art TV show or an art project. So I'm really interested in working with our science folks. We are in the process of taking the temperature of the community to think about medical humanities and potentially doing a medical humanities certificate. But we also love collaborating with groups in the community. So for the past couple of years, we've had this really beautiful show that we have done in collaboration with Gilda's Club of Middle Tennessee that features work by people who have been touched by cancer in one way or another. So sometimes it's caregivers, sometimes it's patients themselves, and sometimes it's health professionals who work with folks. And that has been just a real source of joy for us, right? There's a lot of information that expressive arts are helpful for people who are suffering from an illness. So, yeah.
Well, for those who may just have not set foot in the Curb Center before and need to, what's the best time to come by?
We are open 10 to 4, Monday through Thursday, except for Thanksgiving week.
Don't come
Thanksgiving week, but we would love to see you.
Well, we've loved having you all on the show. If you, Professor Leah Lowe, thank you so much for helping us get to know the Curb Center at Vanderbilt.
My pleasure.
And if you missed the top of the show, we started the hour with the untold story of Roger Williams University, the HBCU that was located close to where the Curb Center is now on the Peabody campus. Also took a trip to Haygood, South Carolina to talk about an exhibit on display at the Curb Center and exploring maternal ancestral lines. So catch up on that if you want to on the show post. Thank you. This is Nashville is a production of Nashville Public Radio. Today's episode was produced by Mary Mancini, directed by Tasha A.F. Limley. Our board operator is Liv Lombardi. The masterminds behind our theme music are Larange and Namir Blade. The conversation doesn't end here. Send us an email at thisisnashville@wpln.org. You can respond to a show, tell us what you want to hear more of or less of. You can also find us on Instagram. This is Nashville. I'm Blake Farmer. Go in peace.